Welcome back. I trust that you listened to some powerful praise and worship tunes. I cannot put these on the recording. So that's why we take a break from it and don't have the praise and worship part on the recording because as we post to Facebook and we post to YouTube, if I were to have them included, we would get a strike and it would be a copyright strike. And I don't know how many you can have, and then they just don't let you post at all. So we don't want to take a chance on any of that. So to have a copyright strike. So we just encourage you to take that break and listen to some praise and worship music and come back, and then we will get into the Torah portion, which we're about to do now. So the Parashat for this week is Hazanu, and actually the translation for that is give ear. Okay, so that's the translation for the Hebrew word hazanu, give ear. So what are they giving ear to? We're going to find out just in a moment. This segment of the Torah that we're going to be reading today is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 1 to 52. And this is all of chapter 32, actually. It is the Song of Moses. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak. Let the earth hear the words of my mouth. May my teaching trickle like rain, my speech distill like dew, like gentle rain on new grass, like showers on tender plants. For I will proclaim Adonai's name, ascribe greatness to our God, the rock, blameless is his work. Indeed, all his ways are just. God of faithfulness, without iniquity, righteous and upright is he. Did it corrupt him? No. The blemish is his children's. A generation crooked and twisted. Is this how you pay back, Adonai? O foolish, unwise people? Isn't he your father who ransomed you? He made you and established you. Remember the days of antiquity. Understand the years across generations. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will say to you, when Elion gave nations their heritage, when he separated the sons of man, he set boundaries for the people by the number of Benaiah Israel. But Adonai's portion is his people. Jacob is the share of his inheritance. He found him in the wilderness land, in the void of a howling waste. He surrounded him, cared for him, guarded him as the pupil of his eye. As an eagle, as an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, he spreads his wings, catches him, lifts him up on his pinions. Adonai alone guided him. There was no foreign god with him, and that means the little g god. He made him mount the heights of the land. So he ate the produce of the field. He suckled him with honey from a rock, with oil from a flinty boulder, butter of cattle and milk of a flock, with fat of lambs, rams of the Bashan, and he goats, with fat of the kidneys of wheat, and blood of grapes you drank. But Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You got fat, you grew thick, you gorged. He forsook God who made him. He mocked the rock of his salvation. They made him jealous with strangers. With abominations they angered him. They sacrificed to demons, a non-God, gods they had not known, to new ones who came in lately, ones your fathers had not dreaded. The rock who birthed you, you ignored. You forgot God who brought you forth. Adonai saw, and he spurned his sons and his daughters. Out of vexation, he said, I will hide my face from them. I want to see their hereafter, for they are an upside down generation, children with no faithfulness in them. They made me jealous with a non God. They vexed me with airy idols. So I will make them jealous with non people. With a foolish nation I will vex them. For fire has ignited in my nostrils. It will burn to Sheol beneath, devour the earth and her produce, and scorch the foundations of mountains. I will heap calamities upon them. With my arrows I will finish them. Wasted by famine, ravaged by plague and pestilence so bitter, fangs of beasts I'll let loose on them, with venom of creepers in the dust. Outside the swords deal death, and inside terror to both young men and young women, infants with men of gray hair. I would have said, I will hack them to pieces, make the memory of them cease from mankind, except I dread the taunt of the enemy, lest their foes might misconstrue, lest they say, our hand is held high, and Adonai has done all this. For they are a nation lacking counsel. Among them there is no understanding. If they were wise, they would discern this. They would understand their hereafter. How can one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and Adonai had handed them over? Surely their rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies judge, for their vine is from the vine of Sodom and from the terraces of Gomorrah. Its grapes are grapes of poison, bitter clusters on it. Venom of serpents is their wine, poison of vipers, so cruel. Is it not stored up with me, sealed up in my treasuries? Vengeance is mine and payback for the time when their foot staggers. Surely their day of disaster is near. What is prepared rushes on them. For Adonai will judge his people, for his servants he will relent. When he sees that strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free, he will say, where are their gods, the rock they took refuge in? Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their libation? Let them rise up and help you, and be a shelter over you. See now that I am He. There are no other gods beside me. I bring death and give life. I've wounded, but I will heal, and none can rescue from my hand. Yes, I lift my hand up to heaven and say, as I myself live forever, when I sharpen my lightning sword, and my hand seizes it in judgment, I will return vengeance on my foes, and those who hate me I will pay back. I will make my arrows drunk from blood, and my sword will devour flesh, blood of the slain and the captive, the head of the leaders of the enemy. Make his people rejoice, O nations, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will return vengeance on his foes and atone for the land of his people. Then Moses came and spoke all the words of this song in the ears of the people, he and Joshua son of Nun. When Moses finished speaking all these words to all Israel, he said to them, put in your hearts all the words that I call as witness against you today, that you may command your children to keep and do all the words of this Torah. For it is not an empty thing for you, because it is your life. By this word you will prolong your days on the land which you are crossing over the Jordan to possess. On that very day Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, go up this mountain of the Abarim, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, facing Jericho, and see the land of Canaan, which I am giving to Bani Israel as a possession. On the mountain that you are ascending, there be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people, because you both broke faith with me among Bani Israel at the waters of Meribeth Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not treat me as holy in the midst of Bani Israel. For you will see the land from afar, but you will not enter there into the land that I am giving to Bani Israel. So God was showing Moses the land, but he was not going to allow him. He already told them that he was not going to enter the promised land with them. Joshua was chosen to take over to lead them into Canaan. So this Torah portion, this chapter 32, Parashat Hazanu, contains this song that the song of Moses that he taught Bani Israel so that they would understand the consequences of their actions. And it ends with Moses preparing to die before the people are crossing into Canaan, the promised land. And as we begin, just as a recap, the Song of Moses begins by uh, calling ear on the heavens and the earth to bear witness to the teachings. And Moses describes God's greatness in detail. Unlike humans, B'nai Israel, God's children, God is not corrupt. God is holy. He's perfect. His works are perfect. He's righteous. He's holy. Um, kadosh. The word for holy in Hebrew is kadosh. He created and formed the whole world. He formed and created humanity. He is Adonai. He is the Father and the Master of the universe. He created everything that is in this world that we see, the world that we live in. Now, Moses also taught B'nai Israel that the knowledge of God has to be passed on from generation to generation, and each needs to bear witness to the fact that God set the promised land, the land of Israel, for B'nai Israel, that he was the one that, that gave each portion to each tribe, that he was the one that cared for B'nai Israel, showered them with blessings, took them by the hand out of Egypt, led them through the wilderness. So Moses is calling B'nai Israel to remember God and to attest to everything that God has done for them and to not forget. Give an ear, as he says to that the heavens and earth are witness, to remember the days of old and consider the years of many generations. So to be able to ask your elders, they should be able to tell you the truth of God and how God helped them in the wilderness, in the desert land, gave them water, gave them food. They never lacked for anything. They were not starving all that time, even though they were wandering and they camped. They had a specific encampment, but they were fed. Their clothes never wore out. They walked for years, but yet their sandals, their shoes never wore out. God supernaturally kept everything intact for them. Now, as he goes on in this song, he is telling them that, you know, he's predicting that the nation of Israel would rebel against God, despite the blessings that Adonai has given. That the nation will abandon Adonai's ways and provoke him with idolatry. Then God will hide his face, cease to offer protection from threats of the outside world. There would be famine, suffering, and war among the people. And Moses says that Adonai would threaten to wipe out the nation, as he did during Moses's time. And Moses actually stood in the gap for the people at particular times when God was really frustrated with the people because, I mean, they built a golden calf. He brought them out of bondage, and they just kind of kept backsliding and backsliding. And um, they had lived, among the Egyptians for many, many years, and they did adopt a lot of their ways. So of course, when they slid back to their sinful nature um, very easily. So I mean, this is when we talk about a newly born again Christian needs to get into a good Bible-based church or Messianic congregation and start digging in the word, because the devil is right there trying to trip up a newborn believer right from the get-go. So the devil was playing his games right here with Benaiah Israel right from the get-go. God did wondrous things for them, took them out of Egypt, and as soon as Moses, the leader, was up, getting the Ten Commandments, getting those 10 words, they just kind of backslid and forgot what they saw, and they went back to what was familiar, and they actually were worshiping this golden calf. They were doing some wicked stuff. Moses got all angry with them as well, broke those 10 commandments, those two tablets, and had to go back up. But God saw everything that they were doing and told Moses, they already have messed up big time. They're worshiping idols, which is the biggest no-no. um, so anyway, throughout history, this happens, and Moses is telling them, "Yep, I'm predicting this is going to happen." Moses then reminds the people that there is always hope, that God will relent to the suffering of his people and turn against their enemies, and he will demonstrate to the world that he alone possesses the power to alter the universe. And he does today. In our world today, as we look at that very statement, God is in control. No matter how chaotic our world is, I mean, and our world has been quite chaotic, especially in this year with this plague that's gone on. It's been very chaotic, and as we look at all the disorderly conduct and the crazy behavior that's going on around the world, it doesn't matter. God is still in control, and He will demonstrate to the world um, that. Moses went on to say that he will rain havoc and death upon those who rose up against Israel and avenge them. And that is a covenant that God has made to Israel forever. And as we look to Revelation, that is going to be a big part in the end days as well. For those that were waging war against Israel, God never slumbers nor sleeps. He will fight their battles. That is part of the end of days. Um, that any nation that rose up against Israel, look out, because God is going to unleash his wrath like never before in the end times. So I wouldn't want to be those nations. Moses advises the nations of the world to sing the praises of B'nai Israel, for those who stand against the Israelites will ultimately suffer. Like I said, this carries on throughout history. When Moses finishes his song, which he did sing with Joshua, he instructs B'nai Israel to take heed of everything that he said and to teach it all to their children. It is with these lessons that the people will cross the Jordan with Joshua leading the way, and they will keep the nation prosperous in the land if they listen to the commandments of Adonai. God then tells Moses to ascend Mount Nebo so that he may overlook the land of Israel before he dies. He gets to see it. He just doesn't get to step foot into the land. He can look and see what B'nai Israel is about to inherit. And just as Aaron died upon a mountain, God tells Moses he will do so as well. And for the same reason, because both brothers, Aaron and Moses, sinned against God at Meribah Kadesh, because neither listened to what God was saying and gave God the glory and the honor by doing exactly what he said. So B'nai Israel could see God's power and what God could do. So neither of them were allowed to enter So that is how this week's Torah portion, this week's Parashat, ends. And in the Haftarah, we're going to see David's song of valor and his last words. It's very interesting how this Parashat, um, this week with the Torah and the Haftarah all coincide. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this and I'm going to come back with part 3 and do the Haftarah.